That intro does not get old. I just love it.
Look at us rocking and rolling and balling on a Sunday morning.
That's how we roll. And welcome to the BeeRPad, everyone. We have an E3-centric episode as suggested by my excellent co-host, Marcus Beer. How are you doing today, man?
Who do what now? What are we talking about?
Talking about
Oh, I'm so over that.
Talking about the Barry Gibb talk show.
Talking about Barry Gibb
talk show. Talking about chest hair. I love that sketch. So
it's one of the few ones with Fallon that I actually enjoy.
That's right. You're not a fan of his.
Yeah. I think he's an incredibly talented individual, but I also think he's a bit of a tool. But that's just me. That's just me, you know. People say the same of me, only they don't say I'm incredibly talented. They say I'm an incredible tool and with no talent whatsoever. So there you go. Yes, we are going to talk about E3, my wonderful co-host Raymond.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about E3, RIP E3.
Maybe.
Who knows? I mean,
yeah.
This is a show that's gone on for centuries. It's outlasted consoles. It's outlasted companies.
That's
it's
right.
outlasted websites and media type-ins. Yeah. And, between the two of us, I mean, I think we've pretty much hit every single one.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is it's an interesting development. It's one that's not surprising. So I suppose we should give everybody the 411 if you're not familiar with the E3. Electronic Entertainment Expo. It's been going since the mid-90s, started off
95.
Now, the first one was in LA, then it moved to Atlanta for 3 years, then it moved back to LA, where it has been ever since.
Right.
LA, Santa Monica for a year, absolute freaking disaster. Then back to the convention center, where it's been every year up until COVID.
Right.
And it's had its ups and downs. It's had its sweet spots. It's had its absolute, horrible years for sort of like the.
Well, let me take a step back. And E3 is a trade show put on by the Entertainment Software Association. Yes, I got it right. Previously, they were the Interactive Digital Software Association, and now they're the Entertainment Software Association. This organization was formed in the early 90s to be like the trade show and advocacy group for video games. And in 1995, they started the video game industry's very own trade show, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, as Marcus said. Prior to that, video games were kind of like the redheaded stepchild at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. And they were treated very poorly and everyone knew, well, at least within the business, how much this business was going to grow, and it deserved more space and time and attention and its own trade show. And last week, the ESA and ReedPop, who they partnered with now to put on the show, they announced that it was going to be canceled for 2023. And some of the quotes leave its future. It's kind of murky and up in the air. So will it come back? I don't know. You seem pretty convinced that it's done.
I think it's done. I think it's done. I am going to say, and I'll explain why in a second. I'm just dropping this into our Discord group.
Ooh.
Because,
Oh, wait, I did that.
Oh, well, there you go. It didn't come up. And I'm also dropping it onto the Facebook because it didn't come up there.
Dun, dun, dun.
Because we need all the viewers, yo.
Oh, yeah, don't forget, like, subscribe, and...
like, subscribe. Say
hi to your mother for me, like Mark Wahlberg.
In fact, that you may want to. I don't know if you can tweet the direct link from the YouTube channel or something, or drop that into Facebook and tag me, because that tweet is not coming through. So I'm gonna delete that whole thing.
While we figure this out. So,
yes, sorry, the joys of it.
Yes.
Why do I think E3 is done? That's a very good question, Raymond. The games industry has changed. Some would say the games industry has evolved. Not me. I don't think it's evolved one idea. I think it's devolved in a lot of ways. It's gone from a system where the journalists actually had journalistic integrity. Well, most of them had journalistic integrity and a set of skills developed more often than not in a journalistic school environment, etc., to a bunch of people who are what's the word I'm looking for? Shills? Whores? What do you want to call influencers nowadays? And I'm sorry, this might be the old man in me, but let's face it, these people are being paid to pimp stuff that they don't fucking believe in, and they have no journalistic integrity whatsoever. So they have basically taken over and destroyed the ecosystem that was games PR, games media, that relationship. And that's the way it goes. If the power of an idiot personality is what's going to make money today, and get people to really watch, well, Ray, you and me are screwed because we're not idiots. I know, just snob. I'm just a snob. But yeah,
you do have a point. I mean, that's what the kids seem to want these days. What
do kids know?
They're watching
this. So this is my problem. We grew up reading.
Yeah.
We grew up reading, and this is old man shouts at the sky. So I'm sorry if you don't agree. Close it out. Drop a comment. Whatever you want to do. But this is definitely old man yelling at sky. I grew up reading about video games and computer games. I read magazines in the UK, Crash, which was a Spectrum one, Zap 64 for Commodore 64, computer video games, CMVG. And then, I evolved into PC Gamer and OXM and PSM. And obviously, when I was in PR, I was working with these guys as well, which was awesome. But I was still reading these magazines every month, not just for my own edification, just for, say, oh, my game's in here. But I wanted to devour everything. And then the internet came along, and we had GameSpot, we had GameSpy, rest in peace. We had IGN, fuck yourselves. And that's just the current iteration of IGN. I'm so over it. I'm afraid. Not all the people there are a douche, but upper management. And things were being updated on a hourly, daily basis. It became more challenging, but it was still people writing, people knowledgeable, people put in the hours.
Right.
Then we started the transition of video, and I was part of that. I was at game trailers. We were doing all these shows. I did Annoyed Gamer, Invisible Walls, Pop Culture Clash. E3 would be, I did my worst of E3 while everybody else was going, oh, best of E3, bagadix. I did the worst of E3 because, that's the way I am. And I think that's, that was a good time, because at the end of the day, we were all being honest. If we liked the game, we liked the game. If we thought something was the best, we'd say it. If we thought something was the worst, I'd say it. And nowadays, it's now way more, I suppose, gimmicky in a lot of ways. It's a lot of people, like I said, taking a lot of money. I'm talking about the top end here. Taking a lot of money. And they're working hard. Don't get me wrong. They are streaming a lot and this, that, and the other. But it's this cult of personality. It's the Kardashian thing that just fails the, the Turing test, as far as I'm concerned, because there's no sign of intelligent life out there. And unfortunately, that cult of celebrity has really taken off in games, probably more so than any other medium.
Oh, yeah.
And you have these people, and it was all started by PewDiePie or whatever his name was. And I think that just basically destroyed the way that people learned about video games. And now, kids just want to look. They just want to look at videos. They want to see their little characters do their little dance. Like, look at me, I'm an influencer. I do my little dance for you. I show my cleavage. I show my ass, and not just the guys.
I definitely agree that that's a big part of why E3 doesn't work like it used to. But part of it is because E3 became so expensive for publishers
Well,
that
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that one because I have been saying for the best part of a decade, my friend, that E3 needed to reinvent itself. It hit the sweet spot around 2010. After we came back from the disaster of Santa Monica, we had 2008, I believe it was, or 2009, which was back at the convention center, which was a little just very business, no glitz, no glamour, dollars, ditch water. The next year, it started to evolve. 2010, 11, 12, I think, was the sweet spot because they had noise restrictions in place. They had booth size restrictions in place. You couldn't send promotional models out onto the show floor. They had to stay in the area. And it was all about people in the industry coming to learn about what was going on in the industry. And I think that the industry was better for it. Now, obviously, that doesn't work anymore because everybody's doing their own directs. They are going straight to the consumer, which is a terrible move for the consumer. Anybody who, you know, and we'll talk about the cost in a sec, but I'm on a roll. I'm on a rant.
Yeah.
Anybody who takes the word of a publisher, a developer, etc., at face value, and tunes into these directs and say, "Oh, they're coming out with this, and this is going to be bloody awesome," and then follows that up with, "Oh, look, they've had X, Y, and Z influencer dance across the screen right there, so they must be legit." You're fucking smoking something that you shouldn't be. Because at the end of the day, publishers, developers lie to you. Or if they're not lying, they massage the facts. I know this why, because I used to be a PR guy. I used to specialize in bullshit. I used to specialize in massaging the message. And then, like I said, you throw the influencers in who have basically dollar signs in their eyes. It's a bunch of trouble. And so the loss of that is the big issue. And then you go into the costs.
Right.
And Ray, you want to talk about the costs because I've dominated the first.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
Conversation.
So the costs of displaying at E3 have been rising. Booths have been getting bigger and more elaborate. You know, the sound systems you have to use, the models you have to pay. So every year it's just getting more and more cost prohibitive. And when the internet advanced enough that publishers could stream their own events directly to the consumers, they could control the message and do things for much cheaper, reach just as many people, if not more, because of internet streaming. It just became, it made more sense to do their own thing either in conjunction or before E3 instead of displaying at E3 at all. And it got even more expensive when they made the decision to open E3 up to the public, which I never thought was a good idea, because then you needed to cater to, you know, to the buyers, to the media, and then you have to cater to the public. That's very different skill sets, very different staffs that you have to put up for those shows. So it got too expensive, got too big, got too unfocused. Maybe because in its glory days, it was just such a spectacle. Like as you were mentioned, we were talking about the sound restrictions and the rules for models, but in its heyday, E3 was just like this big crazy spectacle, big lights, big sounds, and the booths are like Sony used to have like a 3-story booth, which was just nuts.
And it was awesome. It was decadent, it was largesse, it was excess. And to scale back from that, totally understand. And look, I mean, obviously, I've been laying the blame at the influencers and the internet and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. But it's not just that. You're right. It is the cost of flying to LA, the prohibitive cost of the LA Convention Center and their stupid asinine rule that you can only use union members like the Teamsters and who they charge a shit ton of money to use. You can only eat the crappy food that is served there in the commissary or in the catering, which they charge an absolute fortune for. And there's, you know, a minimum order that has to be done. And it's really just quite obscene. So there's those issues. There is the cost of hotels. I mean, LA is not a cheap place. The cost of flights and they are not cheap either. And the carbon footprint now comes into play because obviously we're in a climate crisis.
Right.
And so all these contributing factors have jumped in. But it sucks because you see then shows like DICE, GDC, and PAX still doing very, very well.
Right, but those have a specific focus, like GDC.
No, they are still. I mean, E3 could learn a lesson from them.
Absolutely.
The problem is the ESA is run by idiots and has been for 20 years. The ESA.
I did not say any.
No, I've always been a vociferous critic of them. I think every one of their board members is a disgrace and a absolute insult to the industry they're supposed to represent. I think they don't. They basically want these boondoggles. They want to be on the board. They want it on their business card. Blah blah blah. ESA board member. Blah blah blah. I don't think they've ever worked down in the trenches, whether it be in media, whether it be in games design, whether it be in PR, marketing, QA testing, sales, etc., etc., etc. Because don't forget, the people that are appointed to these boards are the people who've been hired in.
Yeah.
Oh yes, we brought the director of marketing in from Pepsi because they know about video games, and it's like, no, fucking disaster, absolutely every time. Mm-hmm. And so so going back to the ESA, they had this horrible thing, this moment where they said, "Oh yes, we're going to be Gamescom." But instead of saying we're going to do it properly like what Gamescom does, we're going to pull all the public in with everybody at once. And as soon as they did that, the smell got intolerable because, no offense, but when you've got a group of 10 friends coming together to go to E3 who have spent a fortune on an overpriced pass, absolutely overpriced, and are staying in a crappy motel in downtown LA, all of them in one fucking room where they don't wash for days. I mean, that first E3 with the consumers, it stank to high heaven. I mean, it made PAX smell like the armpit of an angel. And so because the ESA got greedy, they didn't say, all right, we're going to do X, Y, and Z on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then Thursday, Friday, we're going to open it up. What do you think? And what's the benefits? I don't even think it was what are the benefits for all the publishers? It's more like, oh, what are the benefits for us? And again, it's this short-sighted thing in that despite having people on their board who are supposed to be the publishers, we're talking about people from Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, EA, Activision. These are the companies that have all fucking bailed on E3, yet they're sitting on the board of the company that that produces or is supposed to produce E3. So there's something quite wrong there. And I feel sorry for ReedPop because they've come in and walked into a shit show of biblical proportions. So there's that part.
Let me take a timeout for a second.
Okay.
For the guys who are watching live, Marcus used the phrase smells like the armpit of an angel. If you have any theories on what the armpit of an angel smells like, please leave a comment because
I got a funny feeling it's like one of those things that it smells like whatever your favorite smell is. Okay. An armpit of an angel smells like whatever your favorite smell is, whether it's your wife's perfume, home cooking, your dog freshly groomed giving you kisses, whatever it is. And E3 has not smelled like that ever. But I mean, especially in the last 6 or 7 years, it smelled like the arsehole of the devil.
That's the opposite of the armpit of an angel. Gotcha.
I mean, just look at what they could have done differently. They could have basically looked at GDC, DICE, and PAX and said, how do we take the best parts of these and create a truly serviceable show for our industry that is geared to the holiday season, which is our biggest time, our biggest amount of sales. Rich Brown in the house. Rich Brown knows how bad E3 got. He was with me so many times working camera, overseeing production when I was at Game Trailers, and he knew how bad it stank.
But I agree with Rich. When I think of a trade show or consumer show smelling like what was it? The Devil's Anus.
The Devil's Anus.
I think of Comic-Con. That's the first thing. Or how Comic-Con used to be before Favreau made it cool.
Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Comic-Con is Comic-Con's still going.
Yes.
Comic-Con, it's funny, Comic-Con has been sort of like overtaken by movies, pop culture, etc., and it's not what it was, where it started off as a comics convention. Now it's anything and everything.
Well, yeah, when they started showing like the fucking Twilight trailers at Comic-Con, I'm like, no.
Oh yeah, and not only that, when I actually remember when I was blogging back in the day, I wrote this whole piece about how pissed off I was that the people couldn't get into one of the convention rooms because it was full of sad middle-aged women who are camping out for the Twilight panel, which, again, has no place anywhere in polite society, and neither do their fans. So I do think they could have looked at all these and figured out what's the sweet spot. It should be a place for business. It should be a place for media relations, and it should be a place for influencers to be able to do their thing, coming together in perfect harmony. And if you want to do something with regards to Joe Public, you then have 2 or 3 days, probably in a separate area, that is basically whatever publishers want to do it. Everybody gets the same booth size. Everybody gets, X, Y, and Z times to have their showcases on big stages. You stream that shit out. But, I also think they need to go the Comic-Con route. And I don't know if Comic-Con's doing this anymore, but I know that for the longest time, they refused to stream the panels at Comic-Con, which encouraged people to go. So you'd refuse to stream the panels from E3, encouraging people to go. You then also give the media a chance to go and write up or broadcast from, or et cetera, to do these things and have their interviews and their summations, and then you produce something that's really useful to the media, and that directs people back to the media. Now, of course, that's not in the best interest of the board members of the ESA and who are running E3, because as I've said before, they basically want their directs and their influencer product placement to be the only thing that goes out there. They don't want journalists asking questions. They don't want journalists writing exposés about crunch or talking about issues in a previous game or why a game is buggy, etc., etc. They want to pay people and control the message. That's the nature of business. That's the nature of capitalism.
Right, but I mean, you brought up a few
in charge of the chicken coop.
You brought up a few shows that I don't think that E3 can quite translate to. GDC and DICE are very developer focused. PAX is obviously all about consumers, and I think that was the problem.
Hang on. DICE is developer focused. When was the last time you went to DICE, my friend?
Whatever the one before COVID was.
So it's 2019.
I think they made it in 2020. I think they just made it, if I remember.
Okay, so 2019 was the last time I went.
Right.
What I saw was an absolute slew of media, an absolute slew of PR and marketing people, and some development people, all tucked away, in corners. But it's generally the high ups. Yeah,
no, it's high level executives in publishing and developing primarily for DICE.
But I mean, GDC was used to, I have never been to GDC. I've always refused. When I was a PR guy, I refused to have any announcements at GDC, because I would say to my dev teams, I would say, all right, who's going to GDC? And I said, just go, learn, talk, network, figure out shit. You're not going to do press interviews. You're not going to do the announcements. We're not going to show any games there. You go and just be with your peers, because that was the best thing in my mind that I could do for my teams, because I knew I had E3, PAX, Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, all these other things coming up where they had to produce shit for. And I think that's what E3 could have. It could have a GDCS component. It could have a DICE component. And you could have these things going on at the same time. And it could say, you know what? There is a section for the media, and there is a section for PR marketing and strategies and higher ups and, these meetings. And there is a section for the development teams and the programmers and the game designers and the sound artists and everybody to get together and talk and learn and so on, and just, hire. And that's what E3 should be about. It should be all of those things encompassed. And if you want to put the public in, like I said, you have your couple of days. The problem with the final problem, and then I'm just going to leave you to talk for the rest of the show.
Sure.
The final problem and the biggest mistake E3 has done recently was getting into bed with Geoff Keighley. Now, Geoff Keighley is a very polarizing figure in the games industry. He's a very hardworking man, and I have a lot of time for him. But he always had his goal for what he wanted to do with his Summer Games Fest, and he was a very, very large part of getting consumers admitted to E3. And then he's the one who walked away from that, leaving the ESA, who are totally inept, as he knew they were. He knew they were inept to carry the can, to holding the baby. And now he's got his own little sub E3 media thing going on. And he's done basically what he wanted to do. He's helped kill off E3. His own show is there now, and he's starting to control the entire messaging. If you of the games industry, because between the summer and the Game Awards, I mean, Geoff Keighley is the most powerful man in games media.
Sure, I will agree with that.
The most powerful man in games media. And look, he's worked very hard to build it.
He
is Ryan Seacrest-esque, but with a penchant for Cosby sweaters.
Slightly taller.
And like I said, I have got no problems with what he's done, because he's done it, and I could never have pulled it off. I don't have that sort of killer instinct, but he knew what he wanted to do, and he did it, and he works very, very hard.
Yeah, credit to him. He's accomplished.
But I mean, the ESA got suckered in there, and it was et tu brute. So look that up, by the way, if you don't know what et tu brute means. But again,
it's about
Rich Brown knows these things because we all work together. So
and he had that hard hit with the Viacom comment. That was great.
Oh yes, Viacom, the site, the company that totally fucked game trailers. I mean, talk about short-sightedness. You had and I'm just non sequitur, I'm going off. You had a website in game trailers that was literally all video content, and they were lumbered with a shitty Viacom video player, and they had no clue how to promote it. I mean, I was sitting in on calls with Viacom marketing in New York where we were trying to get sponsorship for our shows, and they couldn't figure it out because they couldn't sell it, because they were MTV journalists, MTV salespeople, and they had no fucking clue. And then Viacom just shat the bed, sold it off to somebody, and then to Defy and a fire sale, laid everybody off, and then Defy says they went under and sold all the assets to IGN. And so, yes, that's, really, really just a sad state of affairs, because Viacom with game trailers, had they run it properly and not as something, trying to force it into their environment, they could have had the precursor to Twitch.
That very, very much so. And Rich agrees with you. Now, let's take a few steps back. I originally asked you, why do you think E3 is dead? So let's.
Did I answer that?
No. Let's do that.
Well, I mean, dead because of all the things that I just said. In that it's short-sightedness, either short-sightedness or willful mismanagement on behalf of the ESA board.
Okay.
It goes against their own individual interests.
Right.
The E3 couldn't survive in its current situation, or its current form, without the companies, the games companies. And so once, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo are all out, That's the three big players. Then you're looking at EA. EA are out. Then you're looking at Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard. They're out. And that's it. All of a sudden, you've got a table with 8 legs, and those legs are gone. And what have you got left? And no offense to the smaller publishers. I mean, plus people like Bethesda, who'd always kick off E3 with their,
right,
their thing. They're now part of Microsoft because the industry is centralizing.
Right.
Sometime this year, Activision Blizzard will become part of Microsoft, no matter how bad Sony bleat about it. And I do, by the way, I find this really hypocritical. The Sony are going, oh, Activision Blizzard, they're going to take Call of Duty away, but we're going to buy Bungie so people can have Destiny only on the PS6. It's like, fucking grow up.
So I'm going to throw this excellent comment up here from Sublevel 28. The years between like 2012, 2017 were E3 years. Now it was worth taking time off to sit with friends and react to and chat about it. Like we used to take that week off. 18, 19 was a bit meh. I agree with all that.
And Annalie is 100% right. You know why? Because that was also the time where I was doing a lot of video content from E3. And so it was must-see TV. I'm teasing. I tease. But no, she's absolutely right. And then, 18, 19, downhill. I mean, once you add, like I said, added the paying punters, went downhill. But there are so many. It's just been the writing was on the wall when you had everybody doing their whole press conferences before the show, and then everybody was overlapping and everybody was going. All the media were piling onto buses from going from A to B to C to D from like 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, where they were going to the Microsoft press conference. And from Microsoft, you went to Sony. And then from Sony, you went to Ubisoft. And then you went to EA the next day. And then Activision. And then, however it worked. And then there was the day before with Bethesda. And it just started to encroach and encroach. And there was no sense of the ESA sitting down and saying, all right, we've got to control this narrative. We've got to bring this back into the fold. We have got to, present a united front here to keep everything in one big place, because it could be a moneymaker, E3. It could put valuable coin into the ESA's coffers that would then be used for things like lobbying the next time we get an idiot in the White House 2024 who's like, well, video games, they're killing the children. Never mind the AR-15s. It's this Kirby and Mario. My God, plumbers. Oh, they're killing people. Oh my God.
What accent is that?
That is me doing the worst American accent you've ever heard in your life, my friend.
It's kind of Southern, but not.
No. No, I can't do, it's like, I can't do Southern, but, I can do British accents, obviously. It's like, all right there, boy, you okay? You having a nice day now? Let's talk about that E3. This E3 is cracking, and it was such a lovely thing, and now it's all gone tits up. But yeah, it's literally, they've cut their noses off to spite their face, and now they're reaping their whirlwind. They are hoisted by their own petard.
I love that phrase.
I mean, I just don't think they give two flying fucks. That's why you need to have an independent board, and you need to have you need to have the stakeholders working with the board. The board should not be just granted to Sony, PlayStation, Nintendo, etc. And that's the problem. You put the wolves in charge of the hen house, and what happens? Everybody gets demolished.
Right. So the quotes that I've seen from ReedPop and from the ESA are very non-committal about the future of E3. And it reminds me of when politicians don't want to answer the truth of something. So to your point, yeah, it sounds like they're talking about E3 like it's dead. But at the same time, I do think there is a need for something to serve a specific segment of gaming. Like GDC serves developers of all kinds. DICE serves like high-level executives and high-level developers. PAX does a wonderful job of serving, gamers, consumers.
And we've
But
got 2 PAXs a year, East and West, and they are
Right.
never the twain shall meet, and they're great.
Right. But I do think there is, the ESA or IDSA originally was formed as an advocacy group in the 90s to address things like the government going after Night Trap and Mortal Kombat. And I do think there is a need for that, especially with all the shootings in America. Invariably, some politician will be like, oh, well, this is Grand Theft Auto's fault or whatever. So I do think the video game business needs to have better lobbyists, more lobbyists.
And for that to happen, it's got to have an independent board running the ESA. It cannot just be those who are looking after their own,
right?
Their own little cabal and their own little whatever the fuck they want to do.
But that brings me to the point. I mean, does the business even need E3 anymore?
I don't know. I mean, in its current state, no. Because E3 as it's
too unfocused,
absolute disaster. But again, you look at something then like Consumer Electronics Show. That's still going,
right? But it's not even as big as it was.
It may not be as big as it was, but it's still going. Comic-Con's still going. These other shows still going. Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, still going. And it just begs, it shows the mismanagement of the E3 brand. I mean, I still look forward to E3, even when I was working it as a PR guy, even if I knew I would be on my feet for 3 days and just, it's like I couldn't do it nowadays. My dogs would be barking at the end of day 2, and it'd be by day 3 I'd be hiding in one of the conference rooms. I mean, the benefit of this was, and I think this is where I think E3's done. Do you think E3's done?
Probably. Maybe there will be a small summit-like type thing. I mean, you don't need it for the press. You don't need it for developers. The way that buying works and the way consolidation of retails happen, you don't really need it for buyers anymore. So, yeah, and
Mr. Griffiths also controlling the buyers are practically gone. Brick and mortar is dead.
Yeah,
and so it's digital distribution.
Yeah.
So again, they're in control of that now. They're in control of the messaging. They're in control of retail. I mean, they are their own little ecosystems, and that is terrifying. No competition.
So Mark says, Nintendo Directs were the first nail in E3's coffin. No need for conferences in giant theaters. When you can schedule a YouTube video, then they allowed everyone else to break away and do their own. Yeah, Nintendo really showed other publishers you don't need to spend all this crazy money at E3 when you can stream a great video and make gamers
Ironically,
happy.
though, they were doing the directs, but they still had a huge presence on the show floor. I think it was Microsoft were the first ones to bail because they took everything over to the Microsoft Theater, then Sony, but Nintendo was still there at the death in 2019, I think.
So Mark brings up this point also. He says, the real death knell for me was allowing the public in. Completely agree, 100%. For an outsider, it took away the industry feel and made it no different from Gamescom, EGX, etc. Yes, completely agree with you.
And you know what? Maybe it's LA isn't the place to hold E3. I mean, it's always been great for me. Well, apart from the first couple of years where it was in, like I said, Atlanta, or when I was living in the UK or in North Carolina. But since I've been living in LA, it's been an absolute baller. I didn't have to stay in a hotel, get an Uber down or a cab, and I was set. But maybe LA is not the place to do this sort of thing anymore.
Where would you put it?
Huh?
Where would you put it if you could? And it has to be reasonable. You can't say I'm going to have it in the Maldives or
no, Pasadena Convention Center. Yeah, that's I like 3 mile commute. I don't know. I mean, look, GDC needs to move from San Francisco because San Francisco is even worse than LA.
I agree.
So that's 2 that need to move.
So you need a lot of hotel space. You need a fairly large international airport and a big convention center. So, I mean, Vegas works. I don't know if people want to do that.
Vegas works, but not in the middle of summer. Not in
Oh,
June.
yeah.
You know, you work, you live. I mean, good God, you go outside in June or July in Vegas, and it's like splat sizzle, like an egg frying on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
It's always funny when my British friends come to. It's like, oh, we're going to Vegas, yeah, Vegas, baby. When you going August? You fucking nuts. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on the timing. E3 used to be May, and then they started moving it backwards.
Right.
Pushing it back, and it's already. I mean, June, July, August in LA is getting hotter than the armpit of the sun,
as opposed to the angel's armpit.
The angel's armpit. So I don't know where would be the best place to put this, because I mean, you move into the Midwest, you're looking at swamp knickers. I mean, everybody's knickers are totally swampy because it's so hot and muggy there
and humid. And
that's just the way it is, and that's your new word of the day: swamp knickers. Knickers being underpants.
Okay, good, because that's not what I thought you said originally. Whoa, what the?
What do you think I said?
I thought you said something very inappropriate.
Oh, Jesus, no. Swamp knickers. Knickers.
Because my first, like, well, there goes the show. It's like, So Sublevel 28 asked, how is the Upper West Side? Which Pacific Northwest is what we call it.
Yeah, the
like
Upper West Side.
Upper West Side is in Manhattan.
That's Manhattan. Yeah. Look, Seattle has PAX. And Seattle doesn't have, I don't think it has the real estate to handle E3.
Yeah, I was thinking hotel space, it wouldn't quite work. That's a bummer, because summer there is quite lovely. It's like,
well, that's because it's the 3 weeks of the year we're
Carlos is mad that we disparaged his Midwest. He's from dude. Chicago is Helltown.
Midwest during the summer. I mean, we look at what's that? QuakeCon. That's in Texas. In the middle of the summer. And again, at least Texas it's a dry heat, much like Vegas, but still, you're swamping your pants, mate. It's just understandable. Look, I'm the whitest guy you'll ever meet in your life. Once it starts to get to 80 degrees outside, I don't leave the house, and it's dry here in LA. It's very rarely humid.
Right.
I used to live in North Carolina. That was a disaster. The summers were swampy. The winters, horrible. So, yes.
So Carlos says humidity is great. I'm like, it is for some things. If I'm going to the beach.
If you're a fucking tomato plant.
But for a trade show, it is not so great.
Yes, and this is from somebody, again, who did Atlanta.
Oh, man.
In the summer for the first couple of E3s. 2 years back to back, where it would be, how far away is our hotel? Oh, it's 6 blocks. Oh, that's not too bad. And you'd walk out of the convention center into this wall of humidity, and you'd walk 10 feet. Everything would be dripping and squelching. And then all you want to do is jump in the pool, and you get to the pool, after showering off and everything, and it would be full of pale and pasty Euros diving into the pool with their plastic cocktail glasses, and that was it. I mean, that was the fun part for me. But I don't know. I really don't know where you'd hold E3 and what time of year you do it. Would you do it a little? Mark, no.
I mean, I love Vancouver, but
you've got the same problems with Canada. The whole middle of the country is an absolute, a swamp fest. The East Coast and the West Coast, not big enough, really.
Right.
But maybe it's a case of, if it's going to be E3, it's E3 off season. Maybe it needs to be E3. E3 could be in the spring. Maybe it could be in January or February for setting up later in the year. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be summer anymore, but because of the way release dates are so fluid, because everybody says, this game coming out here, and you go, right.
To answer Mark's question, though, it does have to be in the US if the ESA is running it. If it's another group that takes over the E3 band, then knock yourself out.
Yeah. And you have to call it E3A. Or A3.
A3. EH3.
With apologies to our Canadian cousins, you've got a beautiful country up there, and you are a lovely people. I've spent a lot of time up there,
and you have health care.
Yes, God bless you, everyone. All right, so look, we don't know where it's going to be held.
Mexico.
Yes, Puerto Vallarta.
Which is Cabo.
Yeah. Breaking news this morning: the entire Nintendo delegation have been kidnapped. And Sony are caught doing fentanyl in the pool, and Microsoft have all got sunburn.
And bill all your food and drinks to Matt Freri's room, 1183. I did that at a few of his events in Mexico. I'm like, why, yes, I am Matt Freri.
My first E3 with Matt Freri, we were in the worst motel in LA. They booked us into something at the very last minute, and
the Milner.
I can't remember what it was, but it was it was not fun. And literally, Matt had joined the Monday before. I'd already been in place for like 2 weeks. And we bonded in that we were sharing a room. And it's like the first night we got back and we were just exhausted. And we were going to go out and go to like a Sony party or something. But the only food that was available at the restaurant was the Wendy's next door. So when it got, Carl's Jr., sorry. And we went and got a couple of burgers, fries. And literally, he's on the phone talking to his wife. I'm laying on my bed. I've literally stripped to my underpants because I'm like, I'm airing out before I can jump in the shower. On my stomach, I have French fries and a burger, and I'm watching TV, and I'm like, rah. And we have been best friends ever since. So that is an easy story from me and Matt. So look,
I love that story. I want to get to more stories, but I wanted to ask you first. We talked about the fate of E3, all the serious stuff being canceled. Let's get into the fun stuff. Do you remember your first E3? What you made of it? What you thought of it?
First E3 was Atlanta. It was the second one in Atlanta.
Okay.
And what I made of it was, wow, can't believe I'm here. Because I was at, where was I at the time? Interactive Magic. iMagic. And I thought, this is fucking awesome. And oh my God, Atlanta's swampy in my pants. It's the first time I got propositioned by a lady of the evening.
Really?
In the swimming pool, a very attractive young lady.
In the pool?
Yes, she'd gone into the pool area of the hotel. And I was like, oh, thank you. But I literally went all British. I'm like, oh my word. And hair became floppy as you brought.
I think I'll help you out.
Exactly. But I remember we had a great little booth. We had a lot of fun. We were a tight team. Everybody had a blast. What about you? What was your first one?
Mine was the first Atlanta one. And a few of the things I remember was, just going around town. I'm like, why is Peach in the name of every fucking street here? Like, it's Peachtree Lane, Peachtree Drive, and, Peach.
I didn't even get that because obviously, Georgia, Atlanta, peaches apparently are very big there. I remember going to Buckhead.
Yes, that was the cool part of it.
That was a case of, we're all going to Buckhead as a company, and you will got a van, and you will not wander off. You will stay with the group, and everybody will go here for food, will go here for drinks, and these huge drinks in like horrible, big containery type things that were like that. And yeah, that was my first one. And
for my part, I wasn't even in the journalism side of magazine I was still in the business side of magazine publishing, doing international licensing in another lifetime ago. So I was there handling a meeting with some of Ziff Davis's international clients. This one guy from Greece that had a video game magazine. He was so cool. I spent most of my time hanging out with him. Discovering all these Peachtree streets and everything. My friend Jeff Castaneda, who went on to become incredibly successful marketing and PR guy in video games and now at Samsung, he was at the show too. So, he showed me around, introduced me to a bunch of people. That was really awesome of Geoff. So thank you for that. And then I do have a story there that I will tell. I will use one of my story slots. There was a big Eidos party. It was in like some mansion kind of building.
And we will tell everybody now, Eidos, for those who don't know.
Oh, right.
They were the first studio to release Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider, right. So they were a big deal back then.
They were part of Eidos, and before they got bankrupt and everything got sold off, and Square Enix bought them, and then, so that's what Eidos was.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of companies that
do not exist anymore. Yeah. So they had a giant party, but there's this one entryway where security was, where you could get in. So a bunch of us we didn't have a way in. We couldn't find any of our friends to sneak us in. And then this guy, let's call him Bill Wen. He goes, guys, let's just hop the fence and run across the lawn and climb into the party. I'm like, are you out of your goddamn mind? He's like, no, I think we can do it. There's no security there. No one's going to stop us. So he does it. He climbs one fence, runs across this lawn. It's probably like 20, 30 yards, climbs up the trellis to get into the party. And then there he is. Bill Shen taught me how to sneak into E3 parties. I didn't follow him at the time. They thought of better ways in the future, but that was awesome, Bill. Learned a lot from you.
It was funny. We talk about the parties, and it was for the longest time the Sony party was the absolute be all and end all of E3. And it's funny, when I was at the smaller companies, never got a sniff. When I was at Ubisoft, never got a sniff of an E3 of a Sony invite, because it was all about the upper management taking those passes.
Right.
On occasion, somebody would say, "I got a spare pass," and then when I got lucky, when I actually came to Novalogic and I moved down to LA, because I was involved in the relationship with Sony as the PR guy, and that we were a small team. There was one PR guy, one marketing guy, our marketing director, who was absolutely awesome, and a couple of our producers, but we all were interfacing one-on-one with Sony because we were doing PS1 and PS2 games. And then I remember the first time I got the official invite, and I was like, oh. And I will always remember, I've still got the PS2 backpack, the one that's on rollies.
Right.
I've still got one of the bags, because they gave away the best gifts, all branded PlayStation gifts. I remember seeing the Foo Fighters twice.
Right. Yeah.
I remember, and this was the first one I went to, and this was like they wouldn't be able to do this now. Obviously, there was food at the Yin Yang. Amazing, like food for miles around. And the first one was at City Center Studios in LA, I think it was. And there was food, and there was umpteen different bars, and there was all the sushi you could eat, and chicken and everything. But there was also, and it only happened for that first party I was there was somebody walking around giving away packs of smokes, Marlboro Lights.
I remember
we had somebody from Marlboro there giving away Marlboro Lights. And I was a pack-a-day guy at the time. Obviously, I then had a heart attack 20 years later, and now you know why. But I remember leaving that one, having struck up a very nice friendship with one of the ladies who was, giving out the packs, and my backpack that I got given. I must have had about 10 cartons in there.
That's fantastic.
That was like $200 worth of cigarettes back in the day. So yeah. That was a good one. That was a good one. Cigarettes lasted me.
I'm gonna answer
E3 in the Hangar. That was 2007.
That's correct.
Barker Hangar, and all the meetings were in on the Santa Monica beachfront hotels, and then all the games were being shown at Barker Hangar. And I missed that one because I just left Vivendi, and I decided to fuck off and go and do things more enjoyable. For a while, I took a few months off.
So getting back to the Sony parties, there was a good stretch where Sony used to throw 3 parties at E3. They had one before the show, which is it was smaller, had a bunch of celebrities were invited. Always saw someone from That 70s
Keep
Show
talking.
and American Pie. And yeah, keep the comments coming. So Sony was there. The light. My God, it's like he walked into heaven. Oh my God, that light is killing me. Now let's look at Marcus's toys while he's off camera and see what we want to steal. I got Gibbs.
Sorry about that. There was something scrabbling at my door. So
no worries.
The cats.
So Sony would have one before the show started. With
never got invited to the celebrity shows. Celebrity parties, by the way.
There was the big one, which was like at Cindy Stetter Studios, the one you mentioned, and they would have one at a smaller one that was after the show. It was like the wind down party, and they usually had that. I want to say it was at the Standard or the Mondrian. I always forget, but yeah, they would have a small wind down party there, and those are awesome. One of my favorite things at a Sony
How
party.
did you get into these shows? These parties?
I'm very charming. So there's
king of the blaggers. You are.
There is a rumor that Lenny Kravitz was going to be the musical guest at one of the Sony parties. I don't remember what year. So, but everyone was sure that it was Lenny Kravitz, and rumors spread, people talk. But it ended up being Macy Gray, and I thought she did a wonderful job. But
who could also pass for Lenny Kravitz?
So that's the part. 2 guys walk out of it, and they're like, "Damn, Lenny Kravitz sucked." I thought that was.
Where did Macy Gray go?
I don't know. Really cool, unique voice, but
like sandpaper on gravel.
Yes. Now I have another story. There was a THQ party where they gave out cigars, cigar cutters, and a bunch of things.
Things you can't take on an airplane nowadays.
Things you cannot take on an airplane. And a friend of ours, let's call him Schmarren Gladstein. So, yes, that is his pseudonym, Schmarren Gladstein. He was really drunk, as everyone was after the THQ party. He had the cigar cutter in his pocket. And he kept playing with it, playing pocket pool or something or whatever. He ends up cutting the small part of his pinky finger off.
Oh, thank God it was only his pinky.
And nobody really wanted to help him. And then people were laughing at him like, "You idiot, you cut your finger off." But they ended up finding it, putting it on ice, and they sewed Schmarren's pinky finger back on. Just the tip.
Schmarren Gladstein. I didn't even know that story. Oh my God, that's legendary.
That might be my favorite thing that happened to a person I know at E3.
I also remember the Deep Silver parties because they were awesome. Aubrey knew how to throw. Audrey.
Yeah.
Aubrey.
I think it's Aubrey.
But
yeah, those guys.
They knew how to throw a party, and the Saints Row party was so good. My God, I miss that crew. I also miss my memories because my memories are just so short, and the people I haven't seen in so long because of COVID and everything else. And since COVID, I've had all these other complications, and I'm getting old, that I'm actually forgetting people's names, and it's really, really embarrassing. It's one of the reasons I'm just gutted E3 is not happening this year. I was so looking forward to seeing people and just saying, "How are you?" looking at the name tag, going, "Oh my God, Schmarren Gladstein, how are you?"
I mean, to be totally honest, maybe for the last E3 was 2019 was the last one, so maybe for the last 3 or 4 E3s before that, like my favorite part was Pachter's party by far.
Oh, absolutely, the Wedbush networking event hosted by the legend that is Michael Pachter.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's like I was so excited because I got my invitation. I emailed him and I said, I am so there and thank you for the invitation. I had my little mental spot parked out where I could stay away from people and to a certain degree and, wear a mask. And
Right.
But I think it's probably for the best because given that everybody's come back from GDC
with COVID. That's kind of nuts.
DICE with COVID because, people are idiots. Oh, I've got to go to Vegas. I've got to go to San Francisco. I've got to go and, not wear a mask on the plane. And I'm going to give everybody COVID because it's still there, people. So, I suppose it's a blessing and a curse that there is no Pacta party this year. But what I'm going to do is at some point, I'm going to point my car in the direction of Long Beach and go down and surprise him and say, let's go for sushi and scotch. And that's what we should do. So I haven't seen him in 4 years, and it's really is way too long since I've seen that man.
I thought we let's just take his boat out.
We used to do that. Oh God, we used to do that with game trailers, and then when I was doing stuff with Sifted as well. He was so. It's just so fun to have Linda, his wife, drive, and me and him just sitting and shooting the shit about video games and sipping a scotch, and we had such a good time. Yes, I'm going to miss all these people, and it does suck. But that's just the way it is. And so, if you're watching this and and we know you, we love you, and we miss you, we may not be able to remember your names.
So wear your name tag.
Exactly. But yeah, it's sad in a way because E3 was a part of my life for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. You too. We've moved adjacent to the games industry now. We're more sort of like outside looking in. And obviously, if our numbers improve, we can change that because we can start talking about games again because we'll become important and they will have to give us access to events and streams and codes and shit. But that's not going to happen because we're old people and apparently the games industry and these entertainment industries have not figured out that there's a vast demographic of what I like to call the gray gamer, where people of our age who may be married, but we don't have kids, we have disposable income and we spend them on games because we've grown up playing the games our entire life.
Right.
We're not playing golf. We're not going to piss away money watching our college alma mater play football because we're not idiots. And we spend money on games and we have games rooms like this. And, we have a lot more money to spend than fucking 15-year-olds, I'll tell you that. So yes, it's interesting how the market has changed, but the people who are running it just don't understand it. Anyway, that should be another podcast for us. The Old Gamer's Guide to Games for Old People. I think AARP are going to hire us to do a podcast. They really should.
That's right. They can call us the AAR pricks. I love it. Will that work?
BeeRPad.
Aha. Now, if you wanted to
AAR, so BeeRP.
The BeeRPad.
Yeah, there you go. Look at this.
I love it.
Synergistic. That's what we are. Anywho.
Now, if you were writing something on the tombstone of E3, what would you put as the epitaph?
We had fun. You didn't give me a disease. The food was shit.
But I love gravestone. For me, I would go the thanks for excellent memories. BeeRPad Senior Edition. Now I like Marcus's idea better, Carlos.
Sorry, Carlos. You're talking to a marketing pro here.
So thank you for talking about E3. This is a fun trip down memory lane.
I didn't even get to do my Steven Spielberg story.
Well, you got time if you want.
Well, yeah, all right. One quick one then. 2005, my first time with Vivendi. I am doing Fear, the game Fear. and Steven Spielberg's on the EA booth. This is just before the show opens because he was doing. I remember he signed a deal with EA to do a bunch of games, and the first game was that stupid blocks thing or whatever it was.
Oh yeah,
remember that stupid pile of crap? And so he's getting a tour by the EA Great and Good, and I'm like, I just said, sorry to bother you, Mr. Spielberg. Can I just come and show you a game that is so cinematic in its design that I think you will be really impressed? And then we had this like enclosed booth for Fear where it was all blacked out. He went in with Rob Loftus, who's my producer. And I think Rob has told this story a lot as well. And then just got the full Fear demo, which was the demo that we were eventually put out. And he came out and he said to me that, and my biggest irk is that this was pre-camera phone, and nobody had a camera. But he came out and he said that's the best game I've ever seen. And the EA reps' faces were like I had shat on their morning cornflakes. And that was one of the shining highlights for me, was just being able to pull somebody in like that. And it made my team's day because obviously they all got wind of this. And Fear was a baller game, and it was it was a game that did really, really well when it shipped. So that was probably one of the high points for me. The other one being my first E3 with Red Storm back in 2000 at the convention center again. I'd only just moved to the States, and we were giving out these Red Storm blinky balls, these bouncy balls that had little LED lights in them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, totally stupid, but they became the hot commodity of the show. Everybody wanted one of these fucking blinky balls, and I was in charge of them. So I ended up with this side, this sort of like side business where, all right, well, we're only going to give the balls out at every 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever, on the hour. And then on the side, I managed to get lunch for me and my team because the catering guys are like, hey, we'll drop you off some food and drink if we can get some of those balls. Absolutely. So we got lunch for 3 days.
It became prison currency.
Well, somebody from Fox Interactive came over and said, can I get a couple? Give me a card and I will send you some Fox stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I gave him maybe a dozen balls. The week after the show, I get this thing from Fox with like Planet of the Apes box set DVD, Die Hard box set DVD, all these like DVDs and video cassettes and tchotchkes from Fox. It was like this. And then Microsoft, somebody from Microsoft came over and then, again, took my card. And the following week, I got the Sidewinder Pro, the flight stick, the joystick, the paddles, the steering wheel, all sent through. I made out like a fucking bandit that week.
And that is your lesson from Marcus Beer on how to use your balls.
Jim, make sure they bounce and they have LEDs. I will say one more thing about that show. We were right next to somebody, I think it was Activision. They had skaters going up on a skate ramp
right
every hour, and it was so noisy and annoying. We got to the Potter's been sacked by Chelsea. Oh, they did lose today, and Brendan Rodgers is out at Leicester. He got sacked today as well.
Damn. Wait, I mean, what's the point at this point of the season? Like, I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm glad they haven't sacked Jurgen Klopp yet. I mean, it's down. Thankfully, it's down to the players. He's not like he spent a bunch of money. The money hasn't been there. But anyway,
he's got a lot of credit in the bank too. So
yeah. So anyway, these skateboarders, blah blah blah, going, and the noise was just getting too much. And at one point, I was tired, I had a hangover. I just hopped one of these balls, and thankfully, the skater had a helmet on, and I caught him right on the helmet.
Hopefully, it wasn't Tony Hawk.
It wasn't Tony Hawk. No, they didn't have him there. But
so here's a great comment from Mark. Favorite E3 memory for me was the Final Fantasy VII Remake announcement. I think it was 2015. Never been more excited by an announcement that combined with copious amounts of alcohol, me and my friends lost our mind. Yeah. So where were you watching that when that went down? See, I'm always curious, like for people that are watching E3 announcement as consumers, especially when you're in drinking hours like Mark is over in England. That must be a very unique experience. I would love
I
to.
guess watching soccer here.
Yeah. Except
So
except
apparently-
yesterday when I was up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, well, and Newcastle just beat Man United 2-0 to make sure
2-0,
that they're
yeah.
going in. They're going to take fourth place in the for the Champions League. We're not going to make it this year. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't believe Spurs are still there, but they have like they have a game in hand or 2 games in hand.
Well, Spurs, Chelsea, Leicester, none of them have managers now. Crystal Palace have an interim manager.
Who could it be?
Like
Roy Hodgson again. Yeah.
But I mean, it's a messy state of affairs. But anyway, all right. That was a fun show.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes. Thank you for taking a stroll down memory lane with us, talking about E3. Please like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And do you want to do the Tetris movie next time? What should we talk about?
We could talk about Tetris movie. We could talk about obviously we've got Mando and Ted Lasso to catch up on.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find some stuff.
Awesome. And you guys watch the Tetris movie so you can chat about the Tetris movie with us.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time on the BeeRPad. Thank you guys for watching. Love y'all.
We out.